everybody, I'm Joey Paul and I'm an indie author, and today we're talking about writing crime scenes. As a crime writer, I've been asked how I cope with writing death, destruction, and the dark parts of the human world. In other words, crime scenes. Here are my 5 tips on how to write a believable crime scene. So here we go. Number 1, do your research. This should be obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Depending on where you are in the world, depends on where you go for that research. I've got numerous reference books, and you can probably find your equivalent for your area at Amazon or some site like that. You want to be sure that what you're writing about can actually happen. You want to know the procedures and how it works and who arrives at the scene first, and from there on. That means doing a number of checks and making sure you have it right. Sometimes there's a group on Facebook as such, and you can connect with actual police officers from your area. I use a group called Fact Geeks, and we have people who are police officers in the UK, in the US, and all around, and I can always go to them with a question and they're generally able to answer it. They can be a good resource, and I know I've used them time and time again. Number 2, keep it simple. Doing your research doesn't mean that you're going to go into massive amounts of detail. You don't want to info dump. You can still keep it pretty simple even if you're writing a crime novel. There doesn't need to be a lot of information about procedure unless you want there to be. But be careful, because info dumping is never a good idea. Info dumping, if you're not aware, is when a giant wall of text explains everything to the reader. It's much better to feed it through in bite-sized chunks than all at once. That said, number 3, know your audience. If, like me, you're writing for young adults, you should know that the usual amount of death in a young adult story for your genre. That doesn't mean dumb it down, it means know who your audience is, literally what it says. It may be that you're writing for adults and writing a detective story with the main point of view from the head of the investigation. Then you would need to include a lot more info than if you were, say, writing from the criminal or villain's point of view rather than the people catching them. I generally will not hold back too much when it comes to crime scenes, not because I want to show off what I know, but because kids reading crime novels want to know the story and want to know about it as much as an adult would. At least I did when I was a kid reading crime novels. I wanted to know all the nitty-gritty, and I wanted to know everything that went into it because it really interested me. That's something though that you need to decide for both your own story and for your audience. Number 4. Descriptions aren't always necessary. I've talked about it a little in my second point, but descriptions aren't always necessary. I'll give you an example. I read a ton of crime novels, and a lot of them have the intricate details about the condition of the body and the crime scene. But sometimes that's not needed. Sometimes it packs a bigger punch to have the point of view present in the scene with fewer bits and pieces. I'm not saying skimp on procedure, but as I said before, if you're writing a scene with the main focus on the detective, you don't need to give us the painstaking details of every forensic test. That just reads like an info dump. However, this is also a stylistic thing. I'm not a huge descriptive writer, and that's okay with me, and it's okay with my readers, so take that with a grain of salt. If you are a big descriptive writer, there's something wrong with giving descriptions. I don't want to imply that there is. And number 5, dark doesn't always equal bad. I wanted to cover this point because of someone who attended Darker 2017 and will be at Darker 2018. Dark fiction doesn't always mean bad stuff. It doesn't always mean that it's something to be avoided. I write dark novels. I do it because sometimes the dark sides of humanity are worth shining a light on. That doesn't mean I condone it, which seems to be what a lot of people think or when they read or hear about dark fiction. Dark can be anything from violence to horror to crime, etc. It doesn't have to be about the depravity of the human condition to be considered dark, but it usually has some kind of inkling towards that. When writing your own crime scenes, be aware that dark doesn't mean no hope for humans. It just means exploring issues that are sometimes left alone. So those are my 5 tips for writing crime scenes. You can take with them and do with what you will. I will say that these are things that have worked for me, and they may not work for you. That's okay. Everybody has a different writing style, everybody has a different way of approaching things, and it works for you, great. So that's all I've got time for today. If you want to get in touch with me, you can leave a comment or subscribe. I post your videos on Thursdays. Or you can find me on Facebook, on Goodreads, on Tumblr, on Twitter. You can still pre-order Walk a Mile for 99p at the link below. It comes out on June 27th and it's a sci-fi mystery young adult, and I think you'd really enjoy it. My other books are available everywhere, and as always, don't forget to check out Bliss 2018 and Dark 2018, where I'll be signing books this year, all the links to which are listed below. Thanks for watching. Bye.